Hello, everybody. Thanks for joining me. I'm really excited today to speak with Simon James, a very experienced leader from the ops space, marketing ops, RevOps, who's been leading transformation activities and efforts in large organizations and corporations throughout his career. And I think this maybe really touches on the topic that we've been kind of reading, discussing over the past few years of transformation, of rapid transformation, and the needs of organizations to continuously change at an ever increasing pace. So couldn't be happier and excited to speak with Simon today about those transformations and his approach on how to carry out those transformations successfully in large organizations, and make sure that the goals are met while the people are also content and happy and fulfilled in their jobs. So thank you so much for joining me, Simon. How's it going?
Thank you. Very well, thanks. Great to talk with you again, Abhishek.
Awesome. So yeah, would love to dive in and maybe have your take on what does successful transformation look like? And maybe prior to that, maybe give us a bit of context and background for your career, the roles that you've done, and then we can talk more about transformation in B2B organizations.
Yeah, sure. Happy to do that. So, yeah, I work in the B2B space, been doing that primarily as a focus for about 10 years now, across different sectors. So, financial services, operational resilience, not for profit. Um, and really, what I see out there in the B2B space is there's no silver bullet, there's no method for bringing in accounts, selling complex solutions. It's different across the board, can be different in different regions. It gets even more complicated if you're selling multiple products and you're trying to do that globally. So, in my most recent history, what I've noticed is 5 years ago, there might have been a bit more of a gung ho approach to how we do marketing. Like, let's try and sell everything everywhere. Let's buy this application, let's buy that application. And really a lot of frivolous spending. And what I've really noticed in more recent years, certainly post pandemic, that's tightened up. And I would say that a lot of the companies I speak to and have been working with have been a lot more frugal with how they spend. And so, really, I've noticed a scaling down of tech stack, a real focus on how we simplify selling products, and really how we simplify everything and how we go to market. Because, as you alluded to in the intro, your team has to be happy. It has to know what it's doing. And if it's able to do that and feel that there's a career progression in what they're doing as well, and they can hit the business goals, which is the most important thing. That's why we're all here. Then you've got a very happy and successful company. So really, how do we create operational processes, the tech stack, the strategy, make it clear and aligned so that everyone is really buying into that?
Yeah, and I think you mentioned this change and the complexity, and we talked about this a little bit before. It's a pretty different environment that we're operating in than it was, let's say, 5 years ago. So we're seeing this increased complexity, this increased abundance of solutions, and suddenly the RevOps has found itself in a very strategic, I would say, position as opposed to just an implementer, but more of that gatekeeper that says, I need to have a really deep understanding of the objectives, the processes before we let anybody in. Is that something that you're seeing, and how are you and your teams are addressing this increasing amount of complexity?
I think if you have that team, that core team, and they have that perspective and they are gatekeepers, then you give yourself the best chance for success here. Um, the data, the core tech infrastructure, essentially shouldn't be too complicated because your core infrastructure is what probably needs the most work, right? Your CRM needs the most work. That's where you get all your reports from. So you have to make sure the data's clean. Your marketing automation platform, the syncing has to be correct. Right. These two applications have got to run very well. You probably have some kind of hygiene tool that plugs onto this as well to make sure your data is clean and kept clean. And then you will, if you're really serious about B2B, you should probably then have on top of that an intent tool and probably some structural data software that has the company hierarchy data built in. So really, that's your core. And if you've got an ops team, they could be sales ops, marketing ops, and they know those systems really very, very well inside out. Then really, that's a very strong core for your business. And most ops people, they want that. They want to be in a company, not just for a year, for 2 years. You want to stay in a company for a while because your reputation becomes strong because you become a custodian of the data. And you also alluded to why revenue ops is becoming more of a strategic role. In order for those applications to work, the ops people have to work across multiple different functions. So you need to have a strong relationship, obviously, with the CRM team, the developers. You need to have a very clear relationship with the C level. You need to know what the directives are of the organization. You need to obviously you need to have a clear understanding of the product sets because all of this has to be reflected in the data. And you also need to know the complexities of what it is selling these solutions in the market. So it's worth spending time with sales because they've got the hardest job. They've got to sell a complex solution in many regions in Europe. If you're a category creator, they might not even know what that category is. So the sales teams have to do a whole education piece here. So you really do need to, be the custodians of the stack and also have that front-eyed view in how do people actually how are people enabled to use the stack, because it's no good just throwing tech at people and saying there you go, run with it, because people don't have time to learn what this or that application does. They have to hit their targets, they have to earn a living. So you've really got to keep all of these things in mind with whatever you're doing. um, yeah, it's the so what, right? Here's a great report. So what?
Hmm.
How does this help me sell more? Right?
Right.
How does this help us penetrate Germany with this solution? Right? And then what's our percentage to goal when you're reporting to the CMO or to the C level? Right? You need to know all of these things.
So I'm listening to you talking, and we're talking about this combination now of a deep understanding of the technology, but also interrelationship skills, the ability to educate your team or communicate with your team effectively is just as important, or even more sometimes, than just the technology part.
Yes.
And I think this is very similar to conversations I had with sales and marketing leaders about the importance of really having those discussions about our objectives and goals before just rushing into, hey, we need this or we need
Yes.
that. But why? Why do we
One
need
hundred
that?
percent.
If
Yes.
the team doesn't have an understanding of those objectives, then you're not able to move forward. So it's funny that even in a very deeply technical space like ops, where it seems like, yeah, we're dealing with the systems, what you're saying is we're dealing with people.
Yes. Completely. And if you take so you have that core, right? You've got the CRM. That's the first thing. The marketing automation platform. Now marketing can start working. Then on top of that, once you've got your data clean, you've then got to think, well, in the B2B space, I need to know whether these companies are in their market cycle, their buying cycle. You need the intent tool. Now, the intent tools are not cheap. Like you're talking, well into six figures per year to run these tools. But you've got to have the strategy fixed before you bring in that intent tool. Like account-based marketing, intent, all these things, they mean different things to different people, right? So you've got to find a way to communicate how all of these tools go together to do the one thing, which is to help you sell this in Norway or sell this in Australia, right? And that's the key. How do you get it all to focus to that arrowhead, which is how we go to market?
And if we're talking about maybe scale ups or earlier teams or companies, startups that are starting to think about organizing their ops in a more strategic way, as opposed to, yeah, let's just cobble up some tech together
Yes.
or stack. What would your recommendations be for those companies starting out, or GTM leaders considering maybe hiring a RevOps, marketing ops leader? What would be the timing for that? What would be the considerations? Maybe walk me through some of that process that you have in
Yeah,
mind.
I mean this is not easy. this is not difficult. I think you've got to strip everything back to just how do we make things as simple as possible. But in terms of hiring an ops person, you need to have someone who can work on the admin level, for example, in your marketing automation platform. If you take Marketo, for example, it's not an intuitive platform. You can't just walk into it and just pick it up, right? In the same way as you could with another platform where you could maybe drag and drop things and build an email campaign. There's a lot of complexity with Marketo. So you need to have these. You need to have an ops person who's happy to kind of work like an Oompa Loompa in the background, like in Charlie's Chocolate Factory. Just building, cobbling together, and making sure the platform's running. Um, and then you need an ops person who can build the reports as well, not just the performance metrics that exist in your automation platform, but what are we seeing in the CRM, right? What's coming out? What is marketing doing that's contributing to the funnel? Um, and then you need an ops person that can present all of this to multiple different layers of the organization. So it's very difficult here. You need you I think depending on the size of your organization, you're going to need more than one ops person, especially if you're trying to market globally. You need a senior ops person, you need a marketing ops manager, and then you probably need a specialist below that. Um, if you really want to sell, big solutions across multiple markets, it's not easy. There's no, and which one do you start with? you know, um, but the main thing here is, I think when you're hiring someone as a company, especially in ops, and I would say this probably across the board with marketing, it doesn't matter what you've done in the past. Like you could be an expert in HubSpot, you could be an expert in Marketo, right? But if you don't have that sort of dialectic approach to your career, where you're prepared to change at the drop of a hat from one call to the next, you're going to put on your Marketo hat now, your Salesforce hat now, my PowerPoint hat now because I've got to do some reporting. That's the ability to do that is more important than having years of experience in one area. Because as you say, everything is changing constantly. The tech stack is changing constantly.
So when hiring, so let's kind of, and if you're bringing on that person, what you would say is you have to have that agility or that flexibility to really operate in different environments, make those
Yes.
changes, but also a deeper understanding of the objectives of what we're trying to achieve as an organization. And this is in a smaller one. If we go, and let me take you to bigger organizations, you've been working with bigger corporations with regional challenges as well, with
Yes.
geographic challenges. Now the
Yes.
complexity is compounded with regulations, with
Yes.
different cultures and so forth. So maybe walk us through some of those challenges there. What are the things that you've seen, or as companies are scaling into multi-geo operations, what are the things they should pay attention to?
Yeah, I mean, look, it's not like you say, it's not easy. Like I've worked with a number of US companies, and I love working with US companies. A great sort of drive to get things done, big ambition. Um, but often when I work for US companies and they want to go and target EMEA, for example, um, the tech stack really has to be reworked for that. Like the CRM has to be reworked for that. You can't just say we're going to just use the same content, right, and market US English content across all English speaking geos in the rest of the world. That's an easy way to think. Yeah, let's just do marketing like that. But it's completely different. The language we speak in the UK, English versus Australia, is completely different. So you've got to have the ability to be able to cut the data for all of those regions, and that's not easy to do. Like you could do it from a country level perspective and think, right, that's fine, but then you're going to be building huge amounts of campaigns, right? There's a whole lot of content now needs to be created. So you're putting a huge burden on your content team. You're putting a huge burden on your CRM team. Um, and on top of this, you really need to have a solid understanding of each market. A solution that you sell to Microsoft in the US is not necessarily going to be the same pitch to Audi in Germany, right? It's going to have to be a completely different approach, completely different way of thinking. marketers don't have their time to research companies on that level. It would be great if they did, don't get me wrong. A marketer that understands their addressable market on that level is potentially going to be a fantastic marketer. So you've really got to find a way to serve up not just a tech stack that will enable them to do these things, report on these things, but also what are we doing? Like, what are we selling in this market, right? And so I think the ops team can play a role here, because we can provide a feedback loop from the front line to the product content creators, and we can start pushing senior people in the company to give us the data which tells us what we need to do in this market, right? Let's not just say sell everything everywhere. Let's say very specifically what are we trying to sell, where, and then we need to find a way to marry that up with what we see in Zoom Info, which gives us the company data. It tells us what the companies are buying in Holland, where they're recruiting in France, for example. How does that marry up with the data that the senior level of the company are giving us, telling us with what we need to sell? And then how do we link that back with what the sales are looping back to us? And then how do we put all of this together into a melting pot to create a brilliant marketing campaign?
Yeah, wow. It's we just understanding the immense complexity, and we talked about the challenges, if it's geographical challenges, infrastructural, but there's also a huge opportunity, right? Because once everything is kind of relying on a data infrastructure, that really
Yes.
is the foundation that everything runs on. As we're
Yes.
moving into more transformed organizations,
Yes.
that also opens up amazing opportunities. So maybe you can talk to us a little bit about the opportunities and what gets you excited and what you're seeing when the machine eventually works, when people are aligned, the systems are aligned. What are the opportunities, the innovations that you've seen that maybe companies can take advantage of if they're not doing it yet?
Yeah, I think the best opportunities come up in my experience. And look, this is just my experience. This is what I've seen work for me and teams that I've worked with. Is this, you might find something else in another team that works for them, which ties us back to sort of a first principles approach to how we go to market, right? But what I see working very well is a small team that's agile. So a marketer, maybe one or two BDRs, one or two sales guys, ops support, sales enablement support, and then that core tech stack, right? And then,
Mhm.
on top of that core tech stack that we spoke about earlier, you obviously need a webinar software, right? Something like that. You need to have a field marketer that can set up some events. Now, if you've got a small team like that, you can move very quick. Your sales guys will be the small circle. They'll have 10, 20 accounts, right, in their immediate network that they are working on. They either have a relationship with, or they've got some insight. They're trying to create a relationship with these small accounts. Then you've got a slightly bigger circle. This is your BDR. Maybe there's 40, 50 accounts. A BDR is like, hammering the phone, trying to find out who that contact is in the account, trying to set up the meeting for the sales guy. And then your marketers have the total addressable market, right? Which could be 100 accounts, could be your top stock exchange accounts in Holland or your top stock exchange accounts in Italy, whatever, right? Um, and then your marketer is running surround sound digital ads to those concentrated accounts. You can't do it to the whole market because it eats budget, right? Running digital campaigns. They're providing the air cover, to use a cliched word, to the BDRs and to the sales team, the surround sound. And then there's always an event on the horizon, right? There might be a big event, a trade show where there's a chance to do a face to face with these accounts. Or if it's a very complicated B2B solution, maybe just a roundtable event where you can now bring four or five of those top 10 accounts that sales are working on. And then you've got another 5 seats to try and bring in another account. And then you bring in a market leader from your company to come in and talk about the solution at the round table. That's where I see the best results here. You've got that real beginnings of the relationship developing with these accounts.
Mhm.
And if you're looking at cutting down that sales conversion time, velocity of deals through the funnel, this is the best time, or the best way to do it from what I've seen. Um, And if you think of it this way, like certainly in my most recent company, Everbridge, when you have a complex set of solutions, you're trying to, it's very difficult to sell $1 million solution right off the bat. You might want to come in with a smaller solution, but you don't want to pigeon yourself into a position where people look at you as if you only do the small solution. People need to know that you can do this whole suite of things, right? So really focusing on the relationship building, putting your marketing spend into that very targeted list, and just keeping that feedback loop going between that small group, BDR, sales, marketing, and then whatever support you need from the company. That for me has been the optimal way to do B2B from what I've seen.
Interesting. So what you're talking about is essentially a team of teams approach. So we want to have
Yes,
those stronger interconnected teams that complement each other as opposed to having it kind of horizontally doing those
yes,
mass activities. Um, that maybe organizationally it'll be easier to manage if just you have those big horizontal layers. Um, but those team of team approaches doesn't also create much more increased complexity because then each team has maybe different needs. They maybe want to use different tools, and
it
that
does.
can create a managerial or a technological nightmare in the sense because now you're going to have them the different. So how do you reconcile between the need, and I completely understand the need to have those organic teams that push for very clear objectives, very targeted, very focused, like mini startups in the organization,
Sure.
versus kind of the classical approach that, yeah, we do this, and these are the campaigns for the year, and the sales teams, well, good luck to you guys on the
Yeah,
field.
right, right. That's it. It's really complicated. There's no way around it. Like I think if you can set yourself up so that this is resource intensive, right? Working with these small teams, but in some markets, it's the only way you can approach it. But you've also got to think, okay, if this is resource intensive, how can I try and scale this so we're not going fully localized? We're
Mhm.
going, we have some globalized process, and then we're doing, okay, we're going to focus on these markets where we're going to go much more localized, right? So it kind of feels like you need to have a fully integrated global marketing calendar. So you need to have your stable events that you do every year, right? You always know that this trade show is going to happen in Q2, this event is going to happen in Q3. Those are always going to happen, right? Now you can start to automate. If you've got those regular things happening, right, you can automate, right? So now you need to segment your database, right? You need to have your accounts organized by your product set, and you need to begin to automate. So the events are set up, the promotion to the event can be automated. What happens when leads come in from these segments, right? You can automate that. So you automate the education process depending on where they are in their buying cycle. And this is where your intent tool is the most important. Then once you've got that set up, you remove a lot of the ad hoc work and the heavy lifting that comes with setting up campaigns in the automation platform, right? You have the relationship with the event organizers that you're doing the event with. So that's streamlined, you know? Then you can start saying, well, what other resources do I have? Okay. I'm pooling on the global, the regional wide events. I'm now bringing in the automation. What I've got left over then, I can now use to focus in on maybe something that's a bit more of a boutique event because they work better in Norway or they work better in England, right? And that's it, really. I think you've got to try and utilize all the resources of the company, not be in a silo, thinking only I'm only going to focus on this and just do the reporting. Um, but really, you mentioned at the start, you can't kick back. Okay, we've done one event, it worked really well. It's great. There's no guarantee that same event will have the same results next year around because the markets might have changed. You have to constantly keep questioning everything you're doing and trying different approaches. And again, this harks back to the mindset of the team, right? It doesn't matter what you've done, you've got to have that approach of, okay, let's keep questioning this. How did this work? This worked well, let's try and do more of it. This didn't work, let's stop doing it. How do we optimize and do it? That's it. But it's not easy. Certainly not easy.
Yeah. And maybe just a final thoughts that you have in terms of when we met, we talked about account-based marketing and kind of those trends there. That's a topic that I think we've been dealing for a few years. And despite the fact that we've been dealing with it for quite some time, there's still so many different definitions for ABM in different organizations. Um, and one of the things that we see is that every company translates it differently.
Yes.
Um, and sometimes they look at it just as a tech angle. Okay, we need an ABM tech. Some of them look at it from just purely methodology perspective.
Yeah.
When it comes to ABM, what is your experience and where do you see a change there, or how do you explain ABM to the organization?
I think it's like you say, it's a tricky term to use because everyone has a different opinion of ABM. And the absolute worst thing you can do with ABM is say, we've got this target list of accounts, there's 100 on there, just go after those. Because you could be missing on another 500 accounts that are all in market to buy. And I've seen this happen. You put all your resource into trying to land G2K accounts, whatever. Um, and you completely limit yourself. And if your BDRs, for example, are targeted on volume of calls, they're not going to hit their target if there's not enough accounts to go after, right? So I kind of move away from using the term account based marketing, and really I just try and think, look, this is B2B marketing, right? We're trying to sell to businesses, and this really is where the intent tool plays the big role, right? Because if you don't have an intent tool or something that's showing what your users are interested in, what your accounts are interested in, what you're going to do then is you're going to apply your arbitrary funnel definitions to whatever leads come in. So you're going to say that it's marketing qualified, right? Because this lead opened or registered for this event, right? But there could be another contact from that same company, may or may not be in the same department, who is just reading tons of web pages, right? Reading and absorbing. And if you could see the time that they're spending on the web pages, now that is more of a marketing qualified lead than the guy who's come in and just registered for the one-off on-demand webinar, say. So that's where your data showing intent is crucial, because now you're looking at your market based on where the accounts are in their buying cycle. And really, if you want to be, give yourself the best chance of moving accounts through the funnel, hitting like your target deal size, getting some good speed of accounts through the funnel, then you really need to be going after those accounts that are interested in your product. Those are the ones the BDRs and sales guys should be talking to. They should be at the lower end of their buying journey. And so really that's your target account list, but your intent data is making sure that that list is a living list, right? There's new accounts coming in, there's accounts dropping out when the interest wanes, and your sales and BDR guys are not wasting any time speaking to those accounts that are way down the early stages of their buying journey. So really, that's more important than saying let's go after a list of 100 ABM accounts.
Yeah, absolutely. I think to your point, we're looking at ABM like in a all or nothing approach sometimes. Are we doing ABM or are
Yes,
we not? And then missing out on the value of that signals-based approach. It basically
yes,
says some of our addressable market will emit signals,
yes,
and we want to be able to capture and contextualize and activate and operate on those signals. Some of the market will not. Maybe we don't have visibility to those signals. Maybe they are, but we still need to do
exactly.
those activities. So it isn't like are we or aren't we doing, is which components of ABM would make sense to incorporate into our go-to-market. And like you said, it is go-to-market, right? It's B2B
Yes,
go-to-market that leverages those different capabilities.
another problem with just having a fixed target account list is if you're like if your CRM data if your CRM data is not fully, like, how could I put it? You've got your structural account data, right? Typical account, like take Daimler in Germany, for example. It's got something ridiculous like 10,000 subsidiaries, maybe even more, you know.
Right.
Um, Now, how do you translate that to the CRM? Like, how does an account like that go into your CRM, right? You might have a deal in one of these subsidiaries in Norway, but not in the HQ in Germany, right? You might have another deal with some American subsidiary, right, of all of these companies. So you could be saying Daimler is on my list of target accounts, yeah. So let's go do some marketing to Daimler. But which Daimler, right? The, do you try and work on the relationship you have in the company, which means are you connected with the account manager in the other region? Um, the complexity of each of these accounts, and they're changing all of the time, right? Like they'll open a new entity to move their IT solution, or they'll need to grow their HR function in wherever Holland because they want to target the Dutch market for whatever reason. So these companies are extremely complex. So trying to study these companies, it's really impossible. You really should, if a company comes on your radar via the intent tool, then you should start now. Right, maybe I should study this company a bit more. Right, if you're a sales guy or a BDR guy. So that fixed list, it's limiting. It's so limiting. So you again, you need to have that organic list that's constantly changing of accounts that are in market to buy.
So, in addition to what you're saying, if we take Daimler, for example, okay,
Yeah.
um, Daimler can be considered an account, but essentially it is much more. It is more of a market, right? It's more of a market of
Yes.
a lot of different buyers. So maybe a
Yes.
better perspective or a better lens than an account lens would be the buying group, because in Daimler, I may
Yes.
have 10,000 buying groups and they would be vastly
Yes.
different. They speak different languages, they have different objectives. I would sell to them completely different solutions. And
Yes.
so we may need to find, and that's also part of the RevOps mission, to
Yes.
how do we objectify, for lack of a better term, how do we identify those buying group objects so that we can relate to them and measure an impact not on Daimler, because there is no impact on Daimler. It's completely,
Yes.
fantastical to think I can impact Daimler. I can maybe
Yeah.
impact specific buying groups there, right?
Well, yeah, and again, this is the knowledge you need to have because you can shoot yourself in the foot if you're trying to pitch like a, a, $1 million solution that say it's something that needs to operate on the HQ level of a company, then if you target the HQ of Daimler with a 30K a month simple app, right? They're just going to look at you and go, well, why are you reaching out to me? That's just spam, you
Yeah.
know. Whereas if you know that Daimler makes their decisions at that level, you need to approach them maybe more of an account development angle, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's where the onus is more on sales. Maybe you shouldn't be marketing to Daimler, or maybe you should be setting up the round table, and that's a relationship building exercise. Or maybe you've got like a global package do you have for these type of companies if you want to pitch $1 million solution to Daimler, right? If your other strategy is you want to work your way through the subsidiaries and then up to the HQ, then you can do more of a marketing and BDR outreach approach, and you sell a smaller solution. But certainly gone are the days where as a marketer you look at the database and go, yeah, we've got lots of contacts from Daimler, let's just send them an email campaign, right? that's
Right.
that's 100% the worst thing you can do by far. You'll get yourself blacklisted by Daimler probably if you do that.
Totally. All right. Well, any other thoughts in terms of where do you think, this space is heading? Where are some of the things that, you'd be excited in looking at and doing it from a RevOps perspective in the next few years? Or any advice that you may have for marketing professionals who are looking to get maybe into RevOps? What are the things that you'd recommend they look at, they do in this space?
Well, I think remove the line between marketing and operations
Mm,
and just be a marketing person, right? And think operationally. I don't see I don't see a difference really in being a marketer or an ops person. If you want to run a campaign, your end goal must be how do I report on that campaign? right? See, right from the get-go, you need to think like an ops person because if I was the VP of marketing, I wouldn't give you any budget until you told me what your expectations are of this campaign and how you think that campaign is going to bring me ROI. So you've got to be a business person. You've got to think like an ops person from the start. Be realistic. It's very challenging here. So don't, you know, you've got to understand how the tech stack works before you decide you want to do a campaign. Don't think I just want to have like all of these automated email campaigns going out every time leads come in. Someone's got to build that, right? And that's labor intensive, and you've got to justify why you want to build it. So again, you need to think like an ops person in terms of justifying why either you or someone in the ops team is going to build this for you. Um, and I guess just keep learning, keep trying to, keep going to networking events, keep meeting other marketers in the B2B space, try and find out what it is they're doing, and keep doing new ideas and questioning what you're doing. Because as I said, you it might work one time. There's no guarantee it's going to work every time. So you're going to have to keep coming up with fresh ideas. Um, and above all, again, thinking like an ops person. If you're a marketer, try to look for as many automation opportunities as you can. Don't do things ad hoc.
Perfect. Perfect. Well, Simon, really appreciate it. Thank you so much for taking the time to speak. It was really insightful. And I think for me, one of the things really is the human approach into ops, but also a very strategic way of looking at what we're trying to do. And I think the last takeaway, which is for every marketer to think of themselves also from an ops lens,
Yes.
and kind of tie that in, weave it into their mindset and the objectives. I think it's very, very strong. And not
I
just
would
say,
I
okay,
would
that's a technical task, right? It's
yes,
somebody will figure that
somebody
out.
will
I
fix
That's
that.
what I
Yeah,
yeah.
I will add to that as well. Think how sales are going to pick up this lead you brought in, right? Don't just run an event and then take the whole attendee list, dump it over to an ops person to clean it, put it in the database, and then go, well,
Yeah,
it's not gone through the funnel because sales haven't sold anything to it. Like, your marketing campaign has to be that touch point that tees it up for sales and BDR. And those guys are trying to earn a living there, so make it easy for them as well.
totally. All right. Well, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure, and hopefully we'll speak soon.
Yeah, thank you very much, Abhishek. Pleasure for me also.
Cheers.